good morning and welcome to your brand new week on This Morning.
Only just said goodbye to you.
We only just said goodbye. Do you know what? I love Dancing on Ice. Did you watch it last night? Lots of you did. It was very exciting. It was good. It felt good last night.
Very good show.
Audience back.
Yeah.
All look like a good new class. Lots of good characters on there.
They're all getting on, which is great.
So far. I mean, there is time. Gutted for Ekin-Su, got to say.
Yeah, I mean, she'd been poorly during the course of the week.
I mean, she's not out, don't get me wrong. She can still fight another day,
but definitely, I think that set her back a wee bit. So hopefully she can pick up. For the Dancing on Ice socials, we had to write in an envelope who we thought was going to win even before the show started. I'm not going to say anything.
OK, good. I was about to say, don't you dare.
No, I'm not going to say
Not
anything.
on week one. We've got 9 weeks to wait.
All I'm going to say is the fact that it's really tricky to predict who you think is going to win before the show has actually started.
That is true. That is true. Well, we'll see, won't we? We've got 8 weeks to wait until those results.
Yeah. Do you know, it's the third Monday in January. It's Blue Monday. This is the most depressing day of the year. We're having none of this.
No!
People are still waiting for payday. The weather's a bit bleak. It's the day where people are most likely to give up their New Year's health kick, which, I mean, it's one of those things. Make New Year's resolutions. I know myself well enough never to make a resolution.
You won't stick
if I'm going to
to
do something, you know, do it in February or March. It doesn't have to be just in a miserable month.
Rule. Well, listen, we're on a mission to brighten your day today. So not only are we playing Spin to Win twice today... Yeah!
That's a risk in here.
I know, I went for it, though. Just checking you're all awake still. We're adding big cash prizes to the wheel. We've got a real happy ending to today as well. Now you're awake. We'll be speaking to the woman who can orgasm on demand using just the power of her mind. Woo! That's what she said. Happy Monday!
Have you had your coffee today? This is a hell of a start. Was it a magic coffee?
Well, forget lattes and cappuccinos. There's a new coffee hitting the high street after becoming a favourite with baristas in Melbourne, Australia. Magic Coffee has made its way to the UK and is expected to be more popular than the flat white.
Well, we wanted to find out what all the fuss was about, so we've got a coffee expert here.
Hi.
And he's James
Hello.
Gray.
Lovely to meet
so,
you, James.
James, just explain your pedigree for a moment, because you, a while ago, were pretty convinced that the coffee you could get out of the UK was much better than the stuff you could get here.
Yes, I think that the coffee in certain regions, particularly in Australia and New Zealand, there was a big wave of great specialty coffee that was being brewed over there. And actually, it wasn't really, we just saw that in London until they moved over here. So there was a much higher standard of coffee. And even if you would go to other nations like Japan that I travelled to as well, different styles of coffee, but a much higher grade. And it was treated as it is now in the world of specialty coffee in the UK, more like wine. And that's been a long time coming. So if you go back 20 years and you consider wine and the kind of, when the New World guys came along, changed the labels, said tastes a bit like strawberry jam, we all started to understand a little bit more. And that's what we're doing with coffee now.
So this, I mean, we've all sort of, you know, lattes and your flat whites and your cappuccinos. Flat white, I think, is one of the most popular at the moment.
The most popular, yeah.
So what is this then? I like the name, a magic coffee.
Yeah, so the main difference between a magic coffee and something like a flat white is the way that you have the base coffee. So traditionally, if you're having a flat white or a cappuccino or a latte, the base coffee is an espresso. And when you make an espresso using an espresso machine like this, and this is a home version of a machine that you see in coffee shops as well. Typically, what you would do is you put 15 grams of coffee in, and you would want to get 30 grams of the liquid coffee out at the other end. So the ratio is 1 to 2. The difference with ristretto is that you do a ratio of 1 to 1 and you brew it for a shorter period of time.
Can you do it... Because I know that this is going to be served in M&S cafes for £3. Is it £3.50 a cup?
Yeah, that's right, yes.
Hellfire. And they've trademarked the name. I just had a taste. It's not as strong, is it?
No, it's not.
It's quite weak.
Exactly. So there's a big difference. And actually, this... I think one of the logic in this coffee is that you're going to bring more people into the world of drinking coffee. So when you make a ristretto, you brew it for around 20 seconds, and espresso is 30 seconds. And with espresso, at the start, you get acidity and sweetness, and at the end, bitterness. Exactly. So by shortening the brew time and the different ratio, you get acidity and sweetness, but not the bitterness.
So can I ask you then, because it's sort of, it tastes like what my mum described as a milky coffee. That's what it tastes like to me, where you get hot milk and you put a teaspoon of coffee in it. That, to me, is what that tastes like, which I quite like. It feels quite nostalgic. But I tend to drink coffee to wake me up. I sort of, rather than liking the taste, I sort of do it for a purpose, really. Will this have as much of a hit as, say, a...
The simple answer is no.
Right.
Because you're brewing it for a shorter period of time, there's less caffeine physically gets into the coffee. So that will be a lower caffeine content. So if you want a big kick in the morning before the show, you might want to have a different coffee.
It's tricky for me because I'm a tea person.
Yeah.
But can you make it at home rather than have... And I know you're going to make one for us. Rather than all this kit or go to a supermarket cafe, can you make it at home?
Technically, you can't make an exact magic coffee at home because you'd have to brew a ristretto, and a ristretto has to come out of an espresso machine. And an espresso is a type of brewing rather than the coffee itself, which often we think of it being the coffee. So the base being a ristretto, technically you would need to have a coffee machine like this at home. But there are some hacks, and there are ways to get around that.
You're going to show...
I'll show you very quickly.
OK, here we go. Or you can use Mum or Willoughby's recipe of a cup of milk in the
One of the best things to do...
teaspoon of little stir.
I think it's...
Bosh.
Bosh.
What you're trying to do with the ristretto, really, and when you do it at home, is the ristretto, as I mentioned earlier, you've got that sweetness. So we're trying to brew a coffee that has the sweetness without the bitterness at home. And a great way of doing that is to use what nearly everybody has, which is a bog standard cafetiere or French press. And all you do is you're going to add into your French press, you'd be looking to put in 30 grams of coffee. And when you make, this is going to be a cold brew recipe. And because you'd brew it cold, because you haven't got hot water in there, it means you get less bitterness, but you have to brew it overnight. So in a nutshell, what you would do is you double the amount of coffee that you would typically put in your French press. So, for example, in this one, we'd say the magic rule with coffee is 15 grams of coffee to 250 grams of water. However, when you're doing cold brew, you double that. So you put a load more coffee in, but you brew it for a slower period. Fill it up with water, put it on your side, leave it overnight. Next hack.
Overnight?
Overnight.
Oh, right.
On the side overnight, The next hack is the milk, because obviously when you're using one of these, you're steaming milk with the steam wand. And all you do, you take your milk, and I usually use full-fat milk because it tastes better. And then you're putting in 140 ml of milk, just as I've done there. And then, which not many people know, is you use the filter to froth the milk. So your filter goes in, and then you're going to froth it so it goes about halfway up.
Cold milk?
Cold milk.
Well, I didn't know that.
Into the microwave for 45 seconds, and now you're going to have a milk froth. And all you do is it'll actually be too airy in some contexts. So you give it a stir, melt it, and it'll come down, and then you add it to your cold brew coffee.
Amazing.
Well, there you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very clever. Nice to try it, actually. Right, here's what we've got coming up on today's show. With tumble dryers costing £1.70 per load, the Queen of Clean, Lindsay Crombie, is here to show you the cheapest and most efficient ways of drying your clothes indoors. Surely a lemon's not involved in this, Lindsay.
I'm so gutted I've got no lemons today, but I have got some white vinegar tips. But I have got some amazing solutions on these cold, miserable January days to get your laundry nice and dry inside.
Lovely.
Very good, thank you.
See you in a bit. Phil's in the kitchen for some ultimate comfort food for this allegedly miserable Monday. He's making his deliciously creamy chicken and leek pie, which is one of his most popular recipes.
So good. And we said it's being called Blue Monday, which is supposed to be the gloomiest day of the year. So to cheer the nation up, we're playing Spin to Win twice today and adding 2 huge £5,000 prizes to the wheel. So if you've entered, stay with us and it could be your lucky day.
We'll be meeting the woman who can orgasm spontaneously using only the power of her mind. Carolyn Sarsky will be joining us on the sofa to tell us about how she learned her unique skill.
And also coming up today, we'll be discussing today's top stories with Giles and Camilla. That's at 10:20.
It's the true crime story which has made headlines around the world. We'll be speaking to an ex-FBI agent about the Idaho student murders at 11:10.
And Strictly Star Will Mellor will be joining us on the sofa at 11:45.
But before all of that, this week, as many as 500 people in the UK will die waiting for emergency care because of a lack of hospital beds, long delays at A&E and an average waiting time of 90 minutes for an ambulance. we'll be keep hearing about that and the NHS crisis, obviously, in the days and weeks to come.
So today we want to give advice that might just save the lives of your nearest and dearest, both in avoiding the overcrowded A&E departments and what to do in the long wait for help to come. So what should you be doing when we need emergency care? Well, Dr. Phillip and Dr. Sarah have joined us now. Good morning. Welcome to both of you. So this is an obvious question, really, but it's an important one to say. What has caused this?
So I think it's a combination of things. Everything from high circulating numbers of flu and COVID and strep, so lots of respiratory viruses, backlogs from the pandemic. We've got millions of people on waiting list, plus tens of thousands of shortages of doctors and nurses and healthcare staff, even the cost of living crisis, people not turning their heating on. All of this together essentially makes up the perfect storm when it comes to the NHS.